Tonight, at the Confession Stories, a woman sits before the microphone to say something she has never said out loud until now. She was asked to be the bridesmaid at a wedding she never believed in. Her father's. The bride? Her former teacher. This is her confession.
I didn't come here to punish anyone. I came because silence has teeth, and I'm tired of letting it chew through me. If I sound angry, it's because I am. If I sound soft, it's because I remember why I loved them, both of them. Once, when my mother died, the house became a museum of her absence. Grief arranged itself on every surface, the lipstick on the rim of a teacup, the cardigan on the back of a chair, the slippers that still leaned toward each other under the bed, like two people falling asleep mid-conversation. My father moved through rooms like a careful visitor, touching nothing he couldn't put back exactly as it was. He tried to be a sturdy thing. The way chairs try to be there when you fall, but grief is heavy and wood can splinter. At school, Miss Emily taught English literature. She wore quiet dresses and a narrow gold ring that wasn't a wedding band. I asked once when I was still the kind of girl who asked. She smiled and said, "Some promises we wear on the inside." She spoke about honesty the way some people talk about prayer, softly, like it might break if you raised your voice. And after the funeral, she was the first adult who looked at me without pity. "Grief is not a problem to solve," she told me in a hallway that smelled faintly of bleach and winter coats. "It's a language you learn." I learned it slowly, by counting the hallway clock, by washing my mother's teacup and drying it like a ritual I wasn't ready to end. Miss Emily would check in on me sometimes, after school, the kind of kindness that doesn't take notes or ask for proof. She would say, "Why, eat something warm." Warm was a language, too. On the night everything truly began, rain stitched the streetlights together outside our window. Steam lifted from the kettle. My father stood a little straighter than usual, like a man rehearsing his smile. He said he had invited someone over to talk about school matters. Alumni donations. A library project. I believed him because I wanted to. Wanting is a kind of blindness. The doorbell sounded like a memory I hadn't earned yet. I opened the door and smelled a familiar perfume before I saw her. Emily. Not Miss Emily. Not in that doorway, not with rain on her lashes and warmth on her mouth when she said my name. My father's voice arrived behind me. He said, "Come in, Emily." Something small inside me stood up and walked away. We ate soup that tasted like trying. They talked about books and budgets, and I listened for the place where honesty would clear its throat and speak. It didn't. Not that night. Instead, my father's eyes found the edge of her sleeve the way hands find banisters in the dark, lightly, like practice. After she left, the house kept her perfume like a borrowed coat. My father hummed a tune I didn't recognize and said, "She's been kind to us. We could be kind back." Kindness is not a synonym for permission. I wish I had known that then. I told myself there were lines no one would cross. I told myself adults were maps you could trust, even in the dark. Maps lie all the time. They simply call it scale. The next weeks were full of ordinary betrayals. A second bowl set on the table, a mug with a lipstick ghost in our sink, a book left open on the sofa whose spine I didn't recognize. The kind of small domestic clues that don't shout. They accumulate. I kept waiting for Miss Emily to draw a chalk line and write the word boundary in neat letters beneath it, the way she used to on the board when she wanted us to understand structure. She didn't. One afternoon I came home early and found them in the kitchen, not touching exactly. just standing close enough for two shadows to become one at the edge. My father stepped back first. Emily looked at me the way people look at a mirror that suddenly learned to speak. "I should go," she said, but she didn't move. Here is the first thing I have never said out loud. Part of me was relieved, because if they were going to break what we were, I needed them to do it completely, not politely. Polite shatters you slowly. That night, my father knocked on my door and told me the truth in a sentence that thought it was kindness. "We're seeing each other," he said, and his voice was young and frightened, like he had stolen something and wanted me to hide it for him. I said nothing for a long time. Silence can be an answer. It's just not the one anyone wants. He reached for the doorknob, then let it go. "She makes me laugh," he said, and I hated him for the softness in his voice, the apology hiding inside the word laugh. I almost asked if my mother ever made him laugh like that, and then I remembered she did. And then I remembered she was dead. Grief makes cruelty easy. I told him I needed time. He nodded like a man who had already borrowed all of it. The next morning at school, Miss Emily was Miss Emily again. Cardigan, chalk, the ring that wasn't a wedding band. "Good morning," out to class. She didn't look at me longer than she had to. That almost felt like tenderness. She assigned us an essay on boundaries in narrative voice. I wrote about rivers that change course when no one is watching. I turned it in blank. There are days when you cannot translate yourself. I didn't plan to eavesdrop. It was the hallway that did it. That long throat of a corridor where voices carry and the lockers listen. I was returning a library book when I heard my name in a tone I recognized. The way Miss Emily said it when I was late. The way my mother said it when she wanted me to be brave. My father's voice, low. Emily's, lower, and then a sentence that unstitched me. I should have told her sooner. Said by Emily to my father in our school. Sooner than what? Sooner than when? Sooner than my mother's funeral? I don't remember moving. I remember the taste of pennies. The blood you can taste when you swallow anger too fast. I remember the way the fluorescent lights made everything look colder, as if color had decided to leave us first. I didn't confront them then. I went home and opened drawers like they were books that might tell me a better story. In the back of my mother's dresser, behind an old scarf, I found an envelope with my name on it in my mother's hand. Not a letter, not yet, just my name. I put it back. I wasn't ready to be forgiven for something I hadn't done. Here is the second thing I have never said out loud. The night before my mother went into the hospital for the last time, I heard voices in the kitchen. My father, yes. And another voice, a woman's, speaking softly, like prayer. I thought it was the radio. It was not. I didn't recognize it then. But memory has a cruel hobby of labeling things late. The label arrived now in that fluorescent hallway, and it said, Emily, you want me to say I went to war. I didn't. I did what girls are trained to do with their rage. I folded it into the shape of a polite smile and tried to carry it around like a napkin at a party I didn't ask to attend. My father asked me to be kind. Emily asked me to understand. Nobody asked me what I had lost. The invitation arrived 3 weeks later, not to a conversation, but to a ceremony. My father was getting married to Emily. He wanted me to be a bridesmaid. He called it a bridge. I heard it as a leash. He said family photographs live longer than anger. The card said joy 4 times. Grief said nothing, but it showed up anyway. I told him I couldn't. He said that not coming would hurt him. I asked if coming would heal me. We both knew the answer. The night before the wedding, I took the envelope out again, the one with my name. Inside was a single page in my mother's handwriting. If love comes back in a form you don't recognize, check its voice, not its face. No signature, no date. Just that sentence, like a path that doesn't promise where it ends. I wish I could tell you I felt better. I didn't. I felt seen, which is not the same thing. Morning came dressed like a bruise. I put on the dress they chose. I pinned my hair the way my mother used to, because if I was going to stand there and not belong, I wanted at least one thing that did. At the church, Emily waited at the end of an aisle that had learned how to be a river, everyone flowing toward her in small, obedient currents. She looked beautiful in the way sharp things look when you pretend they won't cut you. My father stood beside her and tried on happiness like a suit. It fit him, and I hated that it did. When we were alone for a breath, the dressing room before the vows, the air smelling like roses and tape, Emily turned to me. She didn't reach for my hands. She reached for the sentence she had been saving. "Your mother knew," she said, and the room dropped a degree. "Knew what?" "That I cared for your father," she said. Careful as surgery. She asked me to look after him when she couldn't. I wanted to ask if looking after always required a white dress. I wanted to ask if promises made in hospital rooms count as permission slips for the living. I said nothing. Here is the third thing I have never said out loud. I believed her. I didn't forgive her. Belief and forgiveness are not synonyms either. We walked out to the music people use when they think they know what joy is. The vows sounded like new furniture being moved into a familiar room, all that scraping and arranging, pretending it was always meant to be there. When they said I do, I heard I will, as in I will try to survive this too. I should tell you that I left then. I didn't. I stood very still and learned the weight of staying. After, my father hugged me, and in his shoulder I heard a sound I hadn't heard since before the hospital. A laugh that came from the part of him that wasn't a widower. I hated that I heard it. I loved that I heard it. This is what I mean when I say I didn't come here to punish anyone. That night, at home, the house finally smelled like something other than loss. I wish I could tell you it felt like relief. It felt like treason against my mother's slippers under the bed. I lay awake and tried to hear my mother's voice in that single sentence. She left me. Check its voice, not its face. Emily's voice had always been a careful instrument, a violin in a house built for drums. My father's voice, for the first time in a long time, sounded like home trying to be home again. I didn't sleep. I learned a new silence, not the kind with teeth, but the kind that waits. Waiting is its own language. I kept waiting for life to choose a side. It didn't. It chose breakfast. Coffee began tasting like compromise, and the kitchen learned to hold 3 people without ever letting us touch. After the wedding, Emily did not move in right away. She said it would be gentler this way. Her word, not mine. Gentle is what you call the slow version of the same ache. My father smiled more. The house hummed with small domestic noises again, and my grief learned to sit politely in the corner like an uninvited guest who has memorized the exits. I tried to be civilized about it. Civilized is just anger in formal wear. On Sundays, Emily would stop by with groceries and a bouquet that never matched our vases. She arranged the flowers anyway, cutting stems at an angle, like a person who knows how to make almost fit look intentional. She smelled like the same perfume from the doorway. A clean green note that had once meant teacher and now meant someone I did not consent to becoming family. I learned her shoes by sound. It is a skill, hearing a person's life before you see their face. weeks unspooled like thread pulled from a hem, tidy at first, then snagging on every sharp thing. If you want to know how suspicion grows, watch the way people place their phones face down. One evening, I went to the pantry for sugar and found a shoebox that didn't belong to us. Inside, a small stack of folded notes, an old ticket stub, and a photograph of a hospital door with a paper sign that read, "Quiet, please." The notes were in my mother's hand. Curls and slants I could pick out of 1,000 counterfeits, and addressed to E. I stood there, holding the shoebox like it might bite me back. The top note was short. E. If you have to choose between telling me the truth and protecting him, tell me the truth and protect him anyway. I sat on the floor because the floor is the only honest thing left when walls begin to move. Under the notes, at the bottom of the box, was a cassette tape, a real one, plastic with a handwritten label, kitchen, 2 a.m. We didn't own a player anymore. I went to the attic where Loss retires, and after dust and sneezing and a splinter that felt like penance, I found an old deck from when music required patience. I pressed play, static. Then the kitchen at night, the long hum of the refrigerator, a chair leg moving, a spoon on porcelain. My mother's voice, thin but steady. "Emily?" Emily's voice, lower than I remembered. "I'm here." I did not breathe for the length of a lifetime that fit inside 1 second. My mother said, "When I'm gone, you must make sure he eats." "He forgets food when he is afraid." Emily whispered, "He won't be alone." My mother laughed, the kind of laugh you only make when even pain has manners. "I know. I can hear it when you say his name." I stopped the tape. I started it again because cruelty loves accuracy. My mother, "Promise me you will be kind to my daughter even when she mistakes your kindness for theft." Emily, "I promise." My mother, "And promise me you won't hide from her." Hiding turns love into a crime. On tape, love had a timestamp. Crimes do, too. I pressed stop and looked at the ceiling like answers grow there. There are different kinds of betrayal, the kind you commit and the kind you feel when the story you told yourself becomes untrue in public. I wanted to run down the stairs and demand an apology with interest. Instead, I rewound and listened to the last 30 seconds until the tape grew warm, and my hands learned the shape of surviving something you cannot forgive because you can finally understand it. That night, I set the shoebox on the kitchen table and waited. Waiting is honest work for people who don't know which version of themselves will answer the door. My father came home first. He saw the box and went very still, the way deer become statues when the world refuses to blink. "Where did you—" "In the pantry," I said. He nodded like a man who had run out of the right nouns. Emily arrived with the bouquet that didn't match our vases. She put the flowers down and saw the tape deck, the box, my face. For a second, she looked like a teacher again, someone about to begin a lesson she didn't want to give. I listened, I said, to all of it. I pushed the tape across the table as if it weighed more with the truth inside. My father reached for my hand and then remembered the rule against touching fire. Emily sat down slowly, as if there were instructions printed on the chair. "I should have told you," she said. "You should have told me before the wedding invitations learned my name," I said. I kept my voice low because I wanted him to hear the cost. People assume anger is volume. It's really temperature. I asked her to stay away, my father said suddenly, the words tumbling like dishes from a shelf. "Your mother. She wanted me to smile again, and I hated her for wanting that because it felt like leaving her early." He swallowed. "I didn't want to betray you." "You didn't," I said, and it surprised me that my mouth delivered that sentence. You betrayed yourself when you decided the truth would hurt me more than a lie. Emily leaned forward. I loved you as my student, she said to me, every word buttoned to the next. And I loved your mother as my friend. She asked me to help him stand back up. She turned to my father. I should have insisted we tell her. I said gentle, and I made it cruel. There is a kind of quiet that makes even the refrigerator listen. We sat inside it together. Did it begin before the hospital? I asked. My father closed his eyes, and in that small darkness I saw every version of him I had ever needed, all standing in a line to take the blame. No, he said. It began at the kitchen table the night we forgot to be enemies. He opened his eyes. We were speaking about your mother. I laughed. She put a hand on mine because I was shaking. That was all. And then we were ashamed of how not terrible it felt to be alive for a second. Shame is a busy architect. It builds rooms where honesty can't find the door. I needed you to say it, I said. I needed you to be brave enough to let me be angry. My father nodded and cried the way men cry when they have spent years practicing how not to cry. Quietly, with a face that refuses to fall apart because it is holding up a lifetime of being the sturdy thing. Emily did something I didn't expect. She took off the narrow gold ring and set it on the table. It isn't a wedding band, she said, voice steady. I told you that once. On in the classroom. It's a promise ring I gave myself when I was 20. I promised I would never lie to protect love. She pushed the ring toward me. Keep it until I earn the right to wear it again. I didn't take it. I wasn't ready to hold anyone else's promises. We made tea because making tea is what you do when there is nothing you can fix, and everyone deserves a warm thing to hold that isn't each other. That night, I slept for the first time since the church. Sleep is not forgiveness. It is a truce your body signs without consulting your heart. In the morning, Emily was at the sink, sleeves rolled, washing the cups as if confession requires clean porcelain. I stood in the doorway and realized I had been measuring her voice against my mother's sentence. Check its voice, not its face. Her voice did not ask to be forgiven. It asked to be believed and then judged on what it did with belief. Teach me, I said finally. She turned. Teach you what? How to keep someone fed when fear makes them forget food, I said. I did not say my father. I did not need to. We opened a cookbook my mother had stained with cinnamon and winters. We made a list of meals that could be eaten standing up. Because grief doesn't always remember chairs, we did not talk about forgiveness. We made soup. For a while, the house was almost brave. Then the letter arrived. Not the cassette, not a memory in plastic. An envelope addressed to Mr. and Mrs. with our last name, as if the world had decided paperwork was the final authority on what a family is. Inside was a hospital bill with dates that did not care about our feelings. There, in unromantic print, a charge for visitor badge. 3 a.m. on a night I remembered sitting alone with my mother, counting the beeps that pretend they are time. I brought the bill to the table, and all the tea in the world could not sweeten it. Were you there? I asked Emily, the question already a verdict in my mouth. She nodded, eyes open, hands visible. I was, she said. She called me when the pain spiked and asked me to read to her. Your father had fallen asleep in the chair. I didn't wake him. I should have. The room learned a new silence. Not angry, not forgiving, the kind that moves the furniture an inch and waits to see who notices. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I was afraid you would hear it as theft, she said. No tremor. No theater. And because it was the last night she and I had a secret that belonged only to us. The truth, when it is helpless, looks a lot like love. I wanted to scream that secrets are a currency we cannot afford. Instead, I put the bill back in the envelope and wrote the date on the outside in my mother's handwriting, copying the slant, the stubborn loop of her Y. If the past insists on sending mail, the least I can do is answer in a language it recognizes. We did not talk for 2 days. On the third, my father knocked on my door with his knuckles as if asking the wood for permission first. I don't know how to be good at this, he said. Be bad at it honestly, I said. He laughed the not-widower laugh again, softer. We should eat, he said. We made toast and burned the first 2 pieces because grief likes the taste of almost. Emily came in, paused, and then did the bravest thing I have ever seen her do. She sat down without arranging the flowers first. Your mother asked me to keep the kitchen bright, she said, looking at the window instead of at us. I thought that meant light bulbs and tea towels. I think she meant voices, so we kept talking, not about absolution, not about who deserved what. We talked about grocery lists and dentist appointments and which songs my mother hated and why she always cut sandwiches diagonally. We talked until the house remembered how to hold the sound of us without flinching. Later, alone, I rewound the cassette to the very beginning and pressed play one last time. My mother's voice filled the kitchen again. E. If she ever comes to you with anger, meet it with the truth. If she ever comes to you with silence, meet it with the truth. If she ever comes to you at all, meet her. I pressed stop. The machine clicked like a period finding its sentence. I realized Act 2 of my life with them had already begun, not with forgiveness, but with furniture that finally stayed where we put it. I thought the cassette would be the last surprise. I was wrong. 3 weeks after the hospital bill, the doorbell rang again. Not like memory this time, but like paperwork. My father opened the door to a courier with an envelope from the lawyer who had helped my mother sign all the ways she planned to leave without leaving us entirely. Inside, a short letter addressed to my father, a copy for me, and a line at the bottom in my mother's handwriting that felt like someone turning on a light you didn't know you needed. Sell the house when it begins to keep us instead of hold us. She had written it months before the hospital. She had always been braver than any of us knew. I felt the floor tilt. Are you going to sell it? I asked. My father looked at the walls like they were old friends trying not to take sides. I don't know, he said. I don't know how to leave what I haven't finished staying. That night, I called a meeting at the kitchen table. This is where wars should be fought. Not in hallways that echo, not in churches that already picked a story, but at a table that remembers everybody's elbows. I set 3 cups down, one for my father, one for Emily, one for what my mother would say if words could haunt without hurting. I need terms, I said. Not forgiveness, not surrender. Terms. My father and Emily waited. First, I said, we tell the truth fast. No more gentle that turns into cruel. If something will hurt, say it while it is still small. Second, we stop asking me to make you happy. I am not the furniture that makes a room comfortable. I am a person with a mother who is not here and a father who is, and a teacher who used to be Miss Emily and is now Emily, and I need all of that to be true at the same time without apology. Third, I said, the kitchen stays bright, not just light bulbs, voices. We will speak across this table. We will read her grocery lists out loud if we have to. We will keep him fed when he forgets food because he is afraid. Emily nodded first. I can keep those terms, she said. Voice even. My father looked like a man who had been handed a map back to his own house. I can try, he said. Trying is a promise, I said. We cooked that night because terms need heat to set. Emily taught me the soup that could be reheated without punishing its second life. My father sliced bread and did not try to fix the silence with jokes. When we ate, I placed the narrow gold ring on the table. I can't keep this, I said to Emily. It's not collateral. It was never meant to be, she said, eyes not leaving mine. She did not reach for it, neither did I. The ring stayed between us, a small moon deciding if we deserved its tide. Days learned our terms slowly, like a new language pronounced in a house that had an accent of grief. Emily stopped turning her phone face down. My father started writing lists and leaving them where I could find them. Bulbs, tea, courage. I visited the lawyer alone. I need to know how selling works if we decide to, I said. He told me about market values and inspections and how some houses pass and some houses fail, and none of that means anything about love. On my way home, I bought a blank cassette, not for nostalgia, for symmetry. That night, after they went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and pressed record. The refrigerator hummed. A chair leg moved because chairs are always remembering how to be useful. I said my mother's name out loud and let the room keep it the way a hand keeps warmth after another hand leaves. This is for you, I spoke into the machine. For the woman who told me honesty is a language, and for the woman who tried to speak it, and for the man who forgot how to hear it until now. I told the tape about the ring and the soup, and the letter that said sell the house when it starts to keep us instead of hold us. I told it I didn't know the difference yet. I left the tape beside the older one in the shoebox. Two spines touching like strangers on a bus who don't know they are about to share a story. The last confrontation came quietly, as good ones do, at the sink on a Sunday when the bouquet finally matched a vase without effort. Emily was washing dishes. My father was drying them because sometimes you love a person by preventing water spots. I need to ask you something, I said to Emily. Ask, she said. When you called him by his first name in our kitchen the night before the hospital, was that when it started? She turned off the water and faced me with empty hands. No, she said. It started the night your mother asked me to keep the kitchen bright. Time 1-2s. I misunderstood the job. I thought it meant replacing bulbs. It meant staying when the dark arrived. I looked at my father. He looked at the ring on the table we still hadn't decided about. He said, I don't want you to leave. He did not say who he meant. He didn't need to. Choice arrived, like weather, not asked for, not avoidable, only prepared for by what you wear to meet it. We three stood in it. For once, we did not reach for umbrellas. We learned how to get rained on without drowning. Here are my terms for the future, I said, voice steady. If you sell the house, I will come and pack without accusing the walls of treason. If you keep the house, I will repaint the hallway and we will stop living like a museum. Either way, we meet here on Sundays. We feed him. We speak. Emily lifted the ring. She did not put it on. She set it in a small porcelain dish by the stove where we kept salt and the pencils for lists. Let it live here, she said, until the kitchen decides we've earned it. The kitchen is wise when you let it be. Weeks later, I woke to moving trucks on our street and realized I felt not panic, not relief, permission, We were not selling. We were donating the old sofa, the cracked lamp, the chair that had held too many near falls. We were making space for a table that could seat 3 without pretending someone was missing. We were letting the house hold us without keeping us. I wrote to the lawyer, "Not selling. Not yet." We're teaching the house a new job description. On the first Sunday of this new arrangement, I read aloud from my mother's grocery list. Milk, lemons, patience. My father added matches. Emily added truth. We ate quietly. The kind of quiet that has room for birds to sing outside and for forks to sound like good decisions. After dinner, I took the cassette from the shoebox and pressed play. My voice filled the room, then my mother's, braided by time, until neither one had to win. I turned to Emily. "I still don't forgive you," I said, "but I'm learning to stop punishing myself for your existence." She nodded. "That is fair," she said. "Fair is warmer than forgiveness." I said, For now." I wasn't his bridesmaid anymore. I was his daughter again. Later. When the dishes were done and the streetlights stitched themselves outside our window again, I stood in the doorway and realized the house had finally learned our terms. It held us. It did not keep us. It let us walk from room to room without needing to put anything back exactly the way it was. It let us be new.
Tonight you heard a family choose the truth over the shape of it. Every story has 2 sides. Some have a kitchen. What would you have done if it were you?